भूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय, नवदीप मायापुर धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, अयोध्यापुरी धाम की जय, गंगामय जमुनामाई की जय, श्रीमती तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय, श्यामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय, हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय, जय श्री श्री राधा पार्थ सारथी ललिता विशाखा की जय, श्री श्री सीताराम लक्ष्मण हनुमान जी महाराज की जय, श्री श्री गौरनिताय की जय, श्रीला भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती आविर्भाव महोत्सव की जय, श्रीला भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर प्रभुपाद की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय, हृदय गौर प्रेमानंदे। All glorious assembled devotees, all glorious assembled devotees, all glorious assembled devotees, glories all glories Sri Guru Sri Gauranga।
हरे कृष्णा। सब लोग मेरे साथ पढ़ें। हमारे गुरुदेव के चरण कमल ही एकमात्र साधन हैं जिनके द्वारा हम शुद्ध भक्ति प्राप्त कर सकते हैं। मैं उनके चरण कमलों में अत्यंत भक्ति एवं श्रद्धा पूर्वक नतमस्तक होता हूँ। उनकी कृपा से जीव भौतिक क्लेशों के महासागर को पार कर सकता है तथा कृष्ण की कृपा प्राप्त कर सकता है। मेरी एकमात्र इच्छा है कि उनके मुख कमल से निकले हुए शब्दों द्वारा अपने चेतना को शुद्ध करूं। उनके चरण कमलों में अनुराग ऐसी सिद्धि है जो समस्त मनोरथों को पूर्ण करती है। वे मेरी बंद आँखों को खोलते हैं तथा मेरे हृदय में दिव्य ज्ञान भरते हैं। जन्म जन्मांतरों में वे मेरे प्रभु हैं। वे प्रेमा भक्ति प्रदान करते हैं और अविद्या का नाश करते हैं। वैदिक शास्त्र उनके चरित्र का गान करते हैं। हे गुरुदेव, हे प्रभुपाद, करुणा सिंधु तथा पतितात्माओं के मित्र, आप सबके गुरु एवं सभी लोगों के जीवन हैं। हे गुरुदेव, हे प्रभुपाद, मुझ पर दया कीजिए तथा मुझे अपने श्री चरणों की छाया प्रदान कीजिए। आपका यश तीनों लोकों में फैला हुआ है। जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरवारधारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरवारधारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरवारधारी, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन, यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुना तीरावनचारे यमुना तीरावनचारे यमुना तीरावनचारे जय राधा माधव कुंजा विहारे जय राधा माधव कुंजा विहारे जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरवरधारे जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरवरधारे यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुना तीरावनचारे यमुना तीरावनचारे हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivakacharya Ashtorar Sarasvati Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedna Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivakacharya Ashtorar Sarasvati Srimad Bhaktisidhantha Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrind Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Sri Rupa Shishanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sadga Swami Prabhu Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि घोर भक्त वृंद कीजिए श्री राधा कृष्ण को गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंवर कुंज गिरि गोदान कीजिए ब्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम कीजिए नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम कीजिए जगन्नाथपुरी धाम कीजिए अयोध्यापुरी धाम कीजिए गंगमयी जमुनमाई कीजिए श्रीमती तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी कीजिए सामवेद भक्त वृंद कीजिए हरिनाम संकीर्तन कीजिए श्रीला भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर अपीयरेंस डे कीजिए Thy Gaur Premanande, all glorious assembled devotees, all glorious assemblies, glories, all glories, Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are going to observe the transcendental appearance of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisidhantha Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada, the beloved Guru Maharaj of Srila Prabhupada. Of course, it is not very easy to speak about the glorious glories of a great Acharya. But I will read from his biography and we will get some idea about the personality of Srila Bhaktisidhantha Thakur Prabhupada. At the same time, today we are observing the disappearance of one Acharya in our line, Purushottam Das Thakur, and the recent day, modern saint, you can say, is His Divine Grace, Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj, Gurudev. So he also had performed his disappearance pastime on this very day. So it is always glorious to remember the appearance and disappearance of great Vaishnavas. Because from this we can learn how to become perfect in our lives. Because these great Vaishnavas, they appear not for just for the appearance sake, but they come to deliver the fallen souls. That is very important that we can learn a lot of things about how we can practice our own devotional life. I will just recite one pastime of Srila Prabhupada and how importance he placed on the appearance and disappearance of his Guru Maharaj. So sometime back in the early days, I think it was around 1969, when it was, now I can't remember exact, I'm not very good at history. Either it was appearance or disappearance of Srila Bhaktisidhantha Thakur. And it happened to be a Friday. So of course Prabhupada conducted his normal program in the morning. And then later on, around 9 o'clock, he asked his secretary that what preparations have you made for the celebration today? I said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, we thought it is Friday, so many people will come in the evening, so we are going to celebrate in the evening. Prabhupada was very, very saddened by this, and he became very upset. So without saying anything, he went into the kitchen, and he started preparing a beautiful feast. Within 1 hour, 45 minutes, he made preparations of 10, 20 preparations, cooked very nicely, and then offered it to his Guru Maharaj. After offering to his Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada, very somber and very grave face, he left and went to his apartment, and he began to meditate on his Guru Maharaj, and then began to do his translation. And he did not say a word whole day to anybody after that. So, of course, from this incident, I personally learned that we cannot celebrate the appearance and disappearance of great acharyas according to our will and according to thinking that it is going to be more practical for a particular reason, but it should be done at the right time, at the right place. Of course, the appearance and disappearance are observed throughout the day. From morning, the memories are spoken about, the personality, and then later on, around 11 o'clock-ish, we either do Abhishek, if the deity of the personality is present, or we do Puspanjali, offering of flowers, and then offer Mahabhog, and then do Maha Arti, and conclude by lunchtime the program. And then after that, the memories can continue. But this is a procedure that it has to be done in this way. And that's why Prabhupada was very, very upset that why you are looking at your convenience. Great personality, devotee of the Lord, or the Lord himself cannot be celebrated at our willy-nilly speculative consideration. It has to be done with proper understanding. That is why we are following a path of sadhana bhakti, a regulated bhakti. Everything should be done regulated. Unless you raise very highly in your spiritual life and become Raganuga Bhakta. And even Raganuga Bhakta, you will perform your devotional activities spontaneously. But even then, within that, there is rules, regulations. We saw in Srila Prabhupada himself, as an example, that he was way beyond Raganuga Bhakti. But to set examples for us, he was showing how to do it properly, with rules, regulations, and be very, very mindful of time. He was very particular about time, that everything has to be done in time. Especially, Prabhupada emphasized a lot on deity worship, that everything must be done on time. Not a minute early, not a minute late. So we can learn that. And one more thing which sticks in my mind about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada is that when he appeared, of course, he appeared because there was a calling for his appearance by his father, Srila Bhaktivedna Thakur. Srila Bhaktivedna Thakur, he saw that the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very quickly being lost into sahaja activities. The purity of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was becoming lost. And it was not very many years, only about 400 and something years. And he felt that we have to revive this. So he prayed to the Supreme Lord that please send me a son who will assist me in establishing this. Of course, the Lord heard his prayers, and Srila Bhaktisiddhantha Thakur was born to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his good wife, Mother Bhagavati Devi. Now, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati appeared, there was two things happening at that time. One, of course, the Gaudiya Vaishnavism was becoming lost in its true spirit of devotion and bhakti and purity. It was becoming very much sahaja, and people were doing all kinds of nonsense, thinking that now we have understood the highest level of bhakti of Gopi Bhava. And there are many sahaja groups who were promoting that we are all gopis, and they would actually dress as gopis and dance as gopis. This is, of course, completely Maya. You know, even if you are a self-realized soul and you realize that your eternal Nitya Swarup is a gopi or a manjari in the spiritual world, still in this material world you will act on a platform of who you are in the body you have been granted. For example, Rupa Goswami, we all know that he was not just an ordinary personality, he is Rupa Manjari in the spiritual world. But he never acted like Rupa Manjari, acted as Rupa Goswami. But internally, his attachment to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna was unparalleled. But he did not display that. So that time, all this sahajanism was going on, and there is a fear of losing the original teaching of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At the same time, there was a big British influence in India, and the British were ruling, and I heard a comment that the British came to India to make the Indians into Englishmen. Basically, they were saying that they wanted to create brown Englishmen. And if they were successful in that, then it will be another feather in the cap of colonialism, that we have conquered even the Indians who are considered very uncivilized. We have made them into an Englishman. And of course, Englishman means not just dressing like an Englishman, but talking like an Englishman and eating like an Englishman. And eating means eating all kind of meat stuff and flesh. So this was another counter preaching going on, and the influence of the British. And actually, a lot of people were being converted into the English way of life, thinking that this is the most civilized way of doing things. So a lot of people started eating all kinds of uneatables and thinking that we are very much civilized and advanced now. But of course, it is the most lowest form of advancement you can think of. We say advancement means progressing forward, but here they are advancing in a regression process. They're going down to the worst situation you can ever get. Anyway, so all these things were going on, and in the midst of that, the pure cult of bhakti was being lost. So Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur, by his prayers, he was blessed by Bhaktisiddhantha Thakur Prabhupada. And when he was growing up as a young child, he showed many signs of a great vairagi, a great renouncer. He wasn't attached to anything material like most children of that age would be interested in playing games and doing all sorts of Maya activities. But he was so much interested in studying And by the age of 7, he actually mastered the whole of Bhagavad Gita. He memorized the whole of Bhagavad Gita. Now, can you imagine that most of us, at best of times, even to remember 20 slokas is a difficult task. What to speak of remembering the whole Bhagavad Gita? So it is very, very, important that we understand the personality of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada, that he was not an ordinary person. Actually, he was described as Vaikuntha man, that he came from the spiritual world specifically to assist his father in promoting the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I will just switch on my computer and then read a little biography. Anyway, it is very important that we learn about the importance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada in the history of ISKCON, because without him there would be no Prabhupada. If there is no Prabhupada, then what are the benefits of consciousness which we are now the recipient of would be bereft of. And today, if Krishna consciousness was not so strongly preached around the world, then we wouldn't be sitting here today. We would be somewhere in the Maya world doing all kinds of nonsense activities. So, of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada was very, very bold preacher. He did not care for convention. He broke many conventions. I will tell you one nice, very wonderful pastime of Prabhupada, which of course Prabhupada was following in the footsteps of his own spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada. That when we first acquired the Los Angeles temple, LA, it was a church, and it had the front part of the altar where Jesus' cross was, and then had pews, the seats in the church, and the Westerners, or at least those who are following Christianity, they don't have the system of entering the house of God with leaving the shoes outside. They enter with the shoes. So Prabhupada was so bold that he said that if required, we can allow the Americans come into the temple and take darshan of Sri Rukmini Dwarkadis with the shoes on. Prabhupada was not concerned about the convention, whether one should wear shoes inside a temple or not. He was interested only that these people must take to Krishna consciousness. Somehow or other, they must follow teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and become attracted to chanting the holy name of the Lord, shoes or no shoes. But of course, once they begin to appreciate Krishna consciousness, automatically, they will then learn that it is not a very good thing to wear shoes in the temple room, and then naturally they will refrain from wearing shoes in the temple. And similarly, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada, when he was preaching very boldly, and what we see Navadip, Mayapur now, is a very, very developed area. But in those days, it was like a jungle. No roads, no nothing, no modern conveyances. At that time, when Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur was preaching in Calcutta, it was the stronghold of the British colonial powers, and the governor of Bengal was, of course, a British representative. I forget his name now. He was invited to celebrate Gaura Purnima, the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Mayapur. Now, we all know that even today, to go from Calcutta to Mayapur is a hazardous journey. Now, in those days, it was even more hazardous. But the governor took up the invitation of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada, and he came with his entourage. And can you imagine that when Bhaktisiddhanta heard that he is coming, he told a couple of his disciples that you cook meat, because they will not appreciate our vegetarian food stuff. So this much, far-fetched ideas Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur had to give Krishna consciousness to the Malacha world. So when the governor came with his entourage, they were honored, and then they were fed meat. Now, the sadhus in those days would be totally in uproar against Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. That is, what kind of convention you are holding here? You're celebrating the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but then you're inviting these Westerners, and then you're feeding them meat. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did not care for that. He was only interested in giving Krishna consciousness. By hook or by crook, Krishna consciousness must be taken. You cannot wait for the changes. If Srila Prabhupada had thought that I will go to America and then first I will tell them all to become vegetarians, and after becoming vegetarians, they must become Hindus. After becoming Hindus, then maybe they can chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna would have not spread throughout the world. Prabhupada said, it doesn't matter what you are doing. Come and hear about Krishna Katha. Come and take Krishna Prasadam with us and chant the holy names. And as they began to hear Krishna Katha, chant the holy name, and of course, the most important ingredient, they had the association of a pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. Their hearts changed, and they started to give up all the bad habits. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati broke many conventions, even to the extent that when he was initiating and giving Brahman Diksha to Sudras, unqualified people, and then after giving Diksha to the Sudras and making them Brahmanas, he went for pilgrimage in Vrindavan and Radhakund. And in Radhakund, when he came with his entourage, the Brajbasis began to make attack on the group of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur and his disciples. They're saying that you have broken all the norms of Smarta Brahmanism. How can Sudra become a Brahmana? But of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur was not concerned for convention. He was only interested in presenting the essence of teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And of course, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says very clearly that it doesn't matter whether you are a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Sudra. It is your purity of your heart and your desire to serve the Lord that will make you a Vaishnava. And a Vaishnava is higher than any of these four castes. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Lord, is not discriminating. Why we should discriminate? Just because of some majority of the population who are following the Smartha understanding. So, of course, these are some interesting things which I have learned myself. So, I'll just read from the biography. This is the biography officially presented by the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Srila Bhaktivedna Saraswati was one of the 10 children born to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a great Vaishnava teacher, the disciplined line of Lord Chaitanya himself. While living in a house named Narayan Chhata, just near the temple of Lord Jagannath in Puri, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was engaged as a prominent deputy magistrate and also served as a superintendent of the temple of Lord Jagannath. Yet, in spite of responsibilities, he served the cause of Krishna with prodigious energy. While working to reform Gaudiya Vaishnavism in India, he prayed to Lord Chaitanya, "Your teachings have been gradually depreciated, and it is not in my power to restore them. Thus I pray for a son to help him in his preaching mission. When on February 6th, 1874, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was born to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhagavati Devi in Jagannath Puri. The Vaishnavas consider him the answer to his father's prayer. He was born with the umbilical cord wrapped round his neck and draped across his chest like the sacred thread worn by the Brahmanas. 6 months after the child was born, Bhaktivinoda arranged for his son to undergo Annaprasadam ceremony with the prasad of Vimala Devi, and thereafter named the boy Bimala Prasad. Around the same time, the carts of Lord Jagannath festival stopped at the gate of Bhaktivinoda's residence, and for 3 days could not move. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's wife brought the infant onto the cart and approached the deity of Lord Jagannath. Spontaneously, the infant extended his arms and touched the feet of Lord Jagannath, and was immediately blessed with the garland that fell from the body of the Lord. Seeing this, the priest chanted the name of Hari and told the child's mother that the boy would certainly become a great devotee one day. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur learned that the Lord's garland had fallen on his son, he realized that this was the son for whom he had prayed. Vimala Prasad stayed in Puri for 10 months after his birth and then went to Bengal on a palanquin on his mother's lap. His infancy was spent in Nadia district, Ranaghat, hearing the topics of Sri Hari from his mother. Now you can imagine that this is in 18th century. There is no cars, so they are going from Calcutta to Mayapur on a palanquin carried by walking. It's not a very easy journey, but of course, to go to the spiritual world is also not an easy journey. You have to go through some trouble. Only then you'll appreciate the beautiful Dham. Bhaktivinoda and his wife were orthodox and virtuous. They never allowed their children to eat anything other than prasad, nor to associate with bad company. One day, when Bimala Prasad was still a child of no more than 4 years, his father mildly rebuked him for eating a mango not yet duly offered to Lord Krishna. Bimala Prasad, although only a child, considered himself an offender of the Lord and vowed never to eat mangoes again. That was the vow that he would follow throughout his life. By the time Bimala Prasad was 7 years old, he had memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita and could even explain its verses. His father then began training him in proofreading and printing in conjunction with the publishing of the Vaishnava magazine, Sajana Toshni. Now can you imagine, a 7-year-old boy is actually editing a very, very complex philosophical teachings. And if you think about you and I, what we were doing at the age of 7, probably playing in the streets somewhere. In 1881, in the course of excavating the construction of the Bhakti Bhavan at Rambhagan in Calcutta, a deity of Kurmadev was unearthed. After initiating his son, his 7-year-old son, Bhaktivinoda entrusted Bimala with the service of the deity of Kurmadev. On April 1st, 1884, Bhaktivinoda was appointed the senior deputy magistrate at Sirampura, where he admitted Bimala in the Semarpura High School. When Bimala was a mere student in class 5, he invented a new method of writing named Vichanto. During this period, he took lessons in mathematics and astrology from Pandit Mahesh Chandra Chudamani. However, he preferred to read devotional books rather than school texts. In 1892, after passing his entrance examination, Bimala was admitted into the Sanskrit College in Calcutta. There he spent considerable time in the library studying various books on philosophy. He also studied the Vedas under the guidance of Prithvidhar Sharma. As a student, he contributed many thoughtful articles in various religious journals. However, he did not continue with his college study for long. In 1897, he staged an autonomous Chatupati Sanskrit school, where from monthly journal entitled Jyotirvid, Brihaspati, and many other old treatises on astrology were published. In 1898, while teaching at Sarasvati Chatuspati, he studied Siddhanta Kumudi under Prithvidhara Sharma at Bhakti Bhavan. By the time he was 25, he had become well versed in Sanskrit, mathematics, and astronomy, and he had established himself as an author and publisher of many magazines, articles, and one ancient book, Surya Siddhanta, for which he received the epithet Siddhanta Sarasvati in recognition of his erudite. So after writing that book, he was recognized and given a title, Siddhanta Sarasvati. In 1895, Saraswati Goswami accepted service under the Tripura royal government as an editor for the biography entitled Raja Ratnakar, the life history of the royal line of the independent Tripura kingdom. Later he was entrusted with the responsibility of educating the Yuvraj Bahadur and Rajkumar Vajendra Kishore in Bengali and Sanskrit. After a short period of time, Siddhanta Saraswati took up the responsibility of inspecting various ongoing activities in the royal palace of the state of Tripura. However, after finding envy, malice, and corruption surfacing in every corner of his inspection, Siddhanta Saraswati very quickly developed an aversion to the state affairs and gave notice of his intention to retire from Maharaja Radhakishore Manyakya Bahadur. The Maharaj approved the Siddhanta Saraswati's plan for renunciation and awarded him full pay pension. However, after 3 years, Siddhanta Saraswati also renounced his pension. With his father, he visited many tirthas and heard discourses from the learned pandits. In October 1898, Siddhanta Saraswati accompanied Bhaktivinod on a pilgrimage of Kasi, Prayag, Gaya, and other holy places. At Kasi, a discussion was held with Rama Mishra Shastri regarding the Ramanuja Sampradaya. After this talk, Siddhanta Saraswati's life seemed to take a turn. His inclination towards renunciation increased, and he quietly continued to search for a guru. When Siddhanta Saraswati was 26, his father, understanding the mind of his son, guided him to take initiation from a renounced Vaishnava saint, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was an embodiment of Vairagya and was selective about giving Diksha. He lived beneath a tree near the banks of the Ganges and wore an abundant clothes of dead bodies as a waistband, kupin. Generally, he ate plain rice soaked in Ganga water, garnished with chili and salt. Sometimes he utilized discarded earthen pots. After properly washing them, he would cook rice in them, offer it to Krishna, and then take prasad. Following the advice of his father, Siddhanta Saraswati went to Gaur Kishore Das and begged to be accepted as a disciple. Gaur Kishore replied that he would not be able to give Diksha unless he receives the approval of Lord Chaitanya. However, when Siddhanta Saraswati returned again, Gaur Kishore said that he had forgotten to ask Lord Chaitanya. On the third visit, Gaur Kishore stated that Lord Chaitanya had said that erudition is extremely insignificant in comparison to devotion to the Supreme Lord. Hearing this, Siddhanta replied that since Gaur Kishore was a servant of the Kapat Chudamani, the Supreme Deceiver, hence he must be testing Saraswati by withholding his consent. However, Siddhanta Saraswati remained firmly determined and remarked that Ramanujacharya had been sent back 18 times before he finally received the grace of Gostapurna. Thus, he too would wait patiently until the day that Gaur Kishore Babaji would bestow his benediction upon him. Seeing the commitment of Saraswati, Gaur Kishore was impressed and gave him Diksha in the blissful groves of Godruma and told him to preach the absolute truth and keep aside all other works. In March 1900, Saraswati, accompanied by Bhaktivinoda, on a pilgrimage to Balasore, Ramuna, Bhuvaneshwar, and Puri, as instructed by Bhaktivinoda, Saraswati gave lectures from Chaitanya Charitamrita with profound purpose. Throughout the initiative of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the flow of pure bhakti again began to inundate the world. After Lord Chaitanya's disappearance, a period of darkness ensued in which the river of bhakti had been choked and particularly dried up. The end of the period was brought about by an inundated preaching of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He wrote a number of books on Sudha Bhakti, Siddhanta, and published numerous religious periodicals. He inspired many to take up the service of Lord Gauranga and institute various Namahata and Praprana ashrams, Gaudiya Mat centers. In 1905, Siddhanta Saraswati took a vow to chant the Hare Krishna mantra 1 billion times, residing in Mayapur in a grass hut near the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. He chanted the mantra day and night. He cooked rice once a day in an earthen pot and ate nothing more. He slept on the ground, and when rain leaked through the grass ceiling, he sat beneath an umbrella chanting. In 1912, Mahindra Nandi, the Maharaj of Kasim Bazar, arranged to hold a large Vaishnava Sanmilan at his palace. At a specific request of the Maharaj, Saraswati Goswami attended the Sanmilan and delivered 4 very brief speeches on Shuddha Bhakti or on 4 consecutive days. However, he did not take any food during the Sanmilan because of the presence of various groups of Sahajas. After fasting for 4 days, Saraswati Goswami came to Mayapur and took the prasad of Lord Chaitanya. Later, when Maharaj Mahindra Nandi realized what had happened, he was deeply aggrieved and came to Mayapur to apologize to Siddhanta Saraswati. During that time, Bengal was full of Sahaja sects, such as Alul, Baul, Kartabhaja, Nedhanidhi, Dharavesa, Sen, etc., who followed worldly practices in the name of spiritualism. Siddhanta Saraswati launched a severe attack against those irreligious sects and did not spare anyone who deviated from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Even some well-known persons bearing the surname Goswami patronized these Sahaja sects during the period. Siddhanta Saraswati was deeply grieved to see these groups of Prakrita Sahajas, the garb of Paramhamsa Goswami gurus, misleading the people. Thus he completely disassociated himself and resorted to performing bhajan in solitude. During this period of solitude, one day Lord Chaitanya, along with the 6 Goswamis, suddenly manifested before Siddhanta Saraswati's vision and said, "Do not be disheartened. Take up the task of re-establishing one ashram with new vigor and preach the message of love of Sri Krishna everywhere." After receiving this message, Saraswati Goswami was filled with inspiration to preach the glories of Lord Chaitanya enthusiastically. In 1911, while his aging father was lying ill, Siddhanta Saraswati took up the challenge against pseudo-Vaishnavism, who claimed that birth is their caste. In their caste is a prerequisite for preaching Krishna consciousness. The caste-conscious Brahmana community had become incensed with Bhaktivinoda Thakur's presentation of many scriptural proofs that anyone, regardless of birth, could become a Brahmana Vaishnava. These Smarta Brahmanas, out to prove the inferiority of the Vaishnavas, arranged a discussion. On behalf of his indisposed father, young Siddhanta Saraswati wrote an essay, The Conclusive Difference Between the Brahmana and the Vaishnava, and submitted it before his father. Despite his poor health, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was elated to hear the argument that would soundly defeat the challenge of the Smartas. On the request of Madhusudan Das Goswami of Vrindavan and Viswambarananda Deva Goswami of Gopibalapur, Siddhanta Saraswati traveled to Midnapur, where Pandits from all over India had gathered for a 3-day discussion. Some of the Smarta Pandits who spoke first claimed that anyone born in a Sudra family, even though initiated by a spiritual master, could never become purified and perform the Brahminical duties of worshipping the deity or initiating disciples. Finally, Siddhanta Saraswati delivered his speech. He began quoting Vedic references, glorifying the Brahmanas, and at this the Smartha scholars became very much pleased. But when he began discussing the actual qualification of becoming a Brahmana, the qualities of a Vaishnavas, the relationship between the two, and who, according to the Vedic literature, is qualified to become a spiritual master and initiate disciples, the joy of the Vaishnava haters disappeared. Siddhanta Saraswati conclusively proved from the scriptures that if anyone is born as a Sudra but exhibits the qualities of a Brahmana, then he should be honored as a Brahmana, despite his birth. And if one is born in a Brahmana family but acts like a Sudra, then he is not a Brahmana. After his speech, Siddhanta Saraswati was congratulated by the president of the conference, and thousands thronged around him. It was a victory for Vaishnavism. Bhaktivinoda Thakur passed away in 1914 on the day of Gadadhar Pandit's disappearance. On the eve of his disappearance, Bhaktivinoda instructed his son to preach the teachings of the 6 Goswamis and Lord Chaitanya far and wide. He also requested that Siddhanta Saraswati develop a birth site of Lord Chaitanya. Mother Bhagavati Devi disappeared a few years later. Before her passing away, she held the hands of Saraswati Goswami, imploring him to preach the glories of Lord Gauranga and his Dham. Accepting the instructions of his parents as his foremost duty, Saraswati Goswami took up the task of preaching with intense enthusiasm and vigor. With the passing away of his father and his spiritual master a year later, Siddhanta Saraswati continued the mission of Lord Chaitanya. He assumed editorship of Sajana Toshini and established the Bhagavad Press in Krishnanagar. Then in 1918, in Mayapur, he sat down before the picture of Gaurkishore Das Babaji and initiated himself into the sannyas order. At this time, he assumed the sannyas title Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was dedicated to using the printing press as the best medium for large-scale distribution of Krishna consciousness. He thought of the printing press as a Brihat Madanga, a big Madanga. A Madanga drum played during Kirtan could be heard for a block or two, whereas the Brihat Madanga, the printing press, the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, could be spread all over the world. Rohini Kumar Ghosh, a nephew of the Justice Chandra Madhav Ghosh of Calcutta High Court, and originally a resident of Bhola in Barisala, now in Bangladesh, decided to renounce the world and engage himself in Hari Bhajan. With this purpose in mind, he came to Kula in Navadip, where he led a life of Bhola. However, he despised the practice of this Sevadasis prevalent among the Bhola sect. One day, Rohini Ghosh happened to come to Yogapit when Saraswati Goswami was lecturing there. Rohini was delighted to see the luminous appearance of Saraswati Goswami and fascinated by his words. Late at night, after spending the whole day listening to Saraswati Goswami's teachings, Rohini returned to his Bhola Guru's ashram at Kulia. Without taking any prasadam, Rohini took rest contemplating on the lessons of Sudha Bhakti, which he had heard that day. In his dream, Rohini saw a Bhola and his consort appear before him in the form of a tiger and a tigress, which were about to devour him. Trembling in fear, Rohini desperately called out to Lord Chaitanya. Suddenly, Rohini found himself being rescued from the clutches of the tigers by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. From that day, Rohini left the Bhola Guru forever and took shelter at the feet of Saraswati Goswami. Ananda Prasad Datta, the elder brother of Saraswati Goswami, suffered with severe headaches shortly before his disappearance. On the day of Ananda's disappearance, Saraswati Goswami remained by his side all through the night, chanting Harinam. Before Ananda passed passed away, he briefly regained consciousness and began apologizing to Saraswati Goswami, who simply encouraged him to remember the holy name of the Lord. Suddenly, a tilak mark of the Ramanuja Sampada became clearly visible on Ananda's forehead. Ananda explained that in the past birth he had been a Vaishnava belonging to Ramanuja sect, but due to committing an offense at the feet of Saraswati Thakur, Ananda had to be reborn. However, as a result of his past merit, he was fortunate enough to be born into Bhakti Vinod's family. After finishing his account, Ananda breathed his last. Once, on the day preceding Janmashtami in Bengali month of Bhadra, Saraswati Goswami was engaged in bhajan at Mayapur, but was feeling disturbed as he was unable to arrange for milk to be offered to the deity. As soon as he began to think in this way, he chastised himself. Have I thought like this for my own sake? That is wrong, because it was monsoon season. Lord Chaitanya's birth site was covered with water and was totally inaccessible except by boat. However, that afternoon, one milkman turned up there, wading through the water and slush, carrying a large quantity of milk, shira, butter, cottage cheese, etc. Apparently, a zamindar named Harinarayan Chakravarti, guided by Lord Chaitanya, had sent the milkman with all the offering. After offering everything to the deity, the devotees partook the prasad joyfully. And Saraswati Thakur was surprised to see so much prasad. And devotees explained what had happened. After taking prasad, Siddhanta Saraswati humbly appealed to the Lord, I am very sorry to have caused you so much trouble. When did I have such an uncalled for thought? To fulfill my desire, you have inspired another person and arranged to send these things. The world was amazed to see the supernatural powers of Saraswati Goswami. Many educated persons from highly respectable families were attracted to him and thus dedicated themselves to the service of Lord Gauranga. Between 1819 and 1937, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati founded 64 Shuddha Bhakti Mats at the following places: Navadip, Mayapur, Calcutta, Chaka, Mayameshinga, Nayanganj, Chittoganj, Midnapur, Remuna, Balasore, Puri, Alanath, Madras, Chavur, Delhi, Patna, Gaya, Lucknow, Varanasi, Haridwar, Allahabad, Mathura, Vrindavan, Assam, Kurukshetra, and outside India, in London and Rangoon. Saraswati Goswami instructed Gaurapada Padit as Nasimachala at the top of the Mandara hill, and at several places in South India. He initiated 25 highly educated persons into Bhagavad Tridandi Sannyas. In addition, he published large number of Vaishnava books. In fact, he heralded a new era in the spiritual world. He deputed well-disciplined Tridandi Sannyasis to preach the message of Lord Gauranga all over the world. For 6 years, he continued to supervise the preaching work, and when he found that his mission had attained its goal to a reasonable extent, he decided to pass into the eternal service of Lord Gauranga. He recommended to all Vaishnavas to read these books: Chaitanya Bhagavat by Vrindavan Das Thakur, Dasamula Shiksha by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita by Narahari Sarkar, Prema Bhakti Chandrika by Narottam Das Thakur. According to others, they were Prema Bhakti Chandrika Prarthana by Narottam Das Thakur and Upadesh Amrita by Rupa Goswami. A few days before his disappearance, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati called his foremost disciples and showered his blessings upon all his devotees. He gave them the following instructions: with the utmost enthusiasm, preach the message of Rupa Raghunath. Our ultimate goal is to become a speck of dust touching the lotus feet of the followers of Rupa Goswami. All of you remain united in allegiance to the spiritual master Ashraya Vigraha in order to satisfy the senses of the transcendental entity of non-dual knowledge. Do not give up the worship of Hari even amidst hundreds of dangers, hundreds of insults, or hundreds of persecution. Do not become unenthusiastic upon seeing that the majority of people in this world are not accepting the message of Krishna's sincere worship. Never give up the glorification of the topics of Krishna. They are your own personal bhajan and your very all and all. Being humble like a blade of grass, tolerant like a tree, constantly glorify Sri Hari. So, of course, you can see from the biography here that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was very much enthusiastic to establish a foothold of Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotion. And because of his endeavors, today we are bearing the fruit of Shuddha Bhakti. Like he says that, if you want to have sweet, high quality mangoes, plant a mango seed from that tree. And it will take some 20 years, 25 years before that tree becomes mature enough to produce fruit, which is exactly the same as the seed which was planted from. But it took a long time for that fruit to mature. So similarly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is that tree of Shuddha Bhakti. And the seed of Bhaktivinoda Thakur was planted in the form of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada. And that fruit in the life of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, from the very beginning till his last days, he was establishing the Siddhanta of Shuddha Bhakti. And he entrusted this amongst his senior-most disciples. Now, of course, last night I was watching one biography produced by the Gaudiya Math on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. It's a YouTube with a lot of black and white snippets of recordings of Bhaktisiddhanta's activities, and of course also presenting the biography. And in that, it showed that many educated people came and surrendered to the lotus feet of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And not only surrendered, but then they took the spirit of renunciation. Some of the topmost, highly educated people took to the full order of renunciation. And of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, as this biography mentions, that he entrusted the future of Krishna Bhakti, the Shuddha Bhakti, in the hands of these disciples. Now, it is up to the disciples. Take up this mission with full enthusiasm. As the last paragraph says, do not give up this enthusiasm under any circumstances. Continue to preach, even against all adversities. Of course, some of them were not bold enough to take up this message, to go beyond the shores of India. But one amongst them, the ripened fruit of that tree of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, is His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada. And Prabhupada took the nectar from his spiritual master at the grand old age of 70. But most of us are thinking, I am old, I am diseased, I have no energy, I will retire and do some bhajan somewhere. Prabhupada took up the bull by the horn, and he took the world and a challenge, and he went to America. Now, one of the things I'm so impressed by Prabhupada is that Prabhupada had full 100% dependence on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his spiritual master. These are the only two things which was his sole dependence on. When Prabhupada was preparing to go to America, and he translated the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the first 3 volumes of first canto, he did not consider money an aspect to assist his preaching. He just had sufficient money to print his books, and that was not in a massive quantity, but trunk full of books. Then he went to Sumati Moraji, the lady who owned the India's cargo ship company. She was, in those days, I would consider, in today's money, a billionaire. And Prabhupada went to her. What did he ask? Humbly asked, just give me a passageway in one of your cargo ships. Not even a luxury cruise liner, a cargo ship. Prabhupada could have very well said that you are a very wealthy woman. You have been blessed with so much wealth. And Srimati Moraji also was a devotee of Krishna. She was a Srinaji devotee. So she had respect for sadhus and saintly persons. And she was impressed tremendously by Prabhupada. And if Prabhupada had told Srimati Moraji, why don't you give me maybe $10,000 and a ticket to fly across the Atlantic? Because of course they had planes in those days also. But no, Prabhupada said, I just want the bare minimum. I don't want to become indebted to anybody. But I need this transportation to go. And he did not consider money. Just went on the Jaladuta. And when he reached America, no manpower, no shelter, no money, only his guru in his heart, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he exploded Krishna consciousness. Such a dynamic way that today the ripened fruit of that mango seed which Bhaktivinoda planted in the form of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was ripened fruit. The fruit, I would say, is His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada, exploded. And he planted the seed in New York. But the juice of that mango was scattered all over the world. And we are tasting that nectar. We are becoming influenced by that nectar. And that is why you can see Krishna consciousness is flourishing everywhere. Now, flourishing to such an extent that even in adversity, devotees are going out very boldly to preach, simply to please Srila Prabhupada. And of course, pleasing Srila Prabhupada means pleasing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. And pleasing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada will be pleasing Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And of course, Prabhupada always said that if you really want the mercy of Sri Krishna, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then you have to get the mercy through the parampara. Mercy is coming down from the Supreme Lord to the parampara. And we can be recipient by serving the parampara and getting that mercy. So, of course, we have to become very sincere in our dedication. We should not be considering about our comforts. Most of the time I think that we are so much neophytes in our appreciation of Krishna consciousness that we consider our comforts more important. But we can see that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was sitting under a grass roof which was leaking. Most of us, if we are sitting on a leaking roof, what would we do? We would run away and find another shelter. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he just opened up his umbrella, sat underneath and began to chant. He did not consider the circumstances. He understood the Shuddha Bhakti and Shuddha Nam, which is the only shelter. So he chanted. Prabhupada, he could have stayed in Vrindavan, in Radha Damodar temple, and do his bhajan. And quite happily, he would execute his sadhana bhakti there. And we completely absorbed in ecstasy under the shelter of Rupa Goswami's shelter in his samadhi there in the courtyard of Radha Damodar. But he left all that. He went to America. And if you read Lila Amrita, you will see that how much difficulty Prabhupada had to put through. For what? Likes of you and me. That we could get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Shuddha Bhakti. Now, in return, it is our duty to fulfill this debt by becoming Shuddha Bhakta. If we do not become a Shuddha Bhakta, then we have failed Guru Parampara. We have failed ourselves, that even though we are a recipient of this priceless gem, did not utilize it properly. So, of course, on this day, myself personally, I feel that when we are remembering great personalities, we learn from them that how they dedicated their lives for preaching the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, we also, in turn, have to become like them. And it is not impossible. The mercy of the Guru and Gauranga can be bestowed on every one of us. Every one of us can become empowered to preach the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will only bless us if he sees that you have intense desire in your heart to preach. Not concerned about our personal comforts, circumstances. Even if we have to forsake something, we have to go for the higher cause. Srila Bhaktisidhantha Sarasvati, when he went to the Sun Milan, for 4 days he did not take any prasadam. But his only interest was that he was given short periods on each 4 consecutive day to speak. And he took up the austerity and he spoke his message. And then he left. And after, on the 5th day in Mayapur, he took some prasadam. Some of us, when we are doing our service, we think, oh, forget prasadam time. Let me go and take prasadam, more important. Then, I'm feeling tired. Maybe I'll go and take rest. What is important? Serving Krishna and Guru or taking prasadam and rest? Sacrifice little bit. Krishna will not let you go hungry. Just like, one of the pastimes we see here, that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati desired milk in the middle of a rainy season in Mayapur, which was flooded. Lord Chaitanya arranged for it to come. So, we should have full faith that Krishna will not let us go hungry. Krishna will not let us go without sleep. But if you think the sleep and prasadam or eating is more important, then Krishna says, okay, that is your level of realization, then so be it. But it will not bring you the transcendental mellows of devotion and the pleasure of ecstasy of engaging in Harinam Sankirtan. So if you really want to taste this, then we have to do sacrifice. But that sacrifice, of course, has to be done with proper understanding, not some foolish understanding or in more of ignorance. So I will stop here. It's a lot of wonderful things. Oh, sorry. Today also we are observing the disappearance of Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj and Purushottam Das Thakur. So in the Samadhi book here, there is a very short passage on Purushottam Das Thakur. So I will just read that. So during the day, we can also meditate on that. And all the Vaishnavas coming in the line of Gaudiya Vaishnavism to seek their blessings. And also we can do justice by becoming sincere in our dedication of our spiritual life. So this is a very short passage about Sri Purushottam Das Thakur. Sri Purushottam Das constantly meditated on and served the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Kanu Thakur, his son, was such an exalted devotee that Lord Krishna always lived in his body. When Kanu was 5, Ma Jahnavi took him to Vrindavan. The Goswamis joyously greeted him upon seeing his genuine devotion. In Golok Vrindavan, Purushottam Das Thakur served Lord Balaram as a cowherd boy. Dwadas Gopal. His samadhi is located in the 64 Samadhis area in Vrindavan. So it's very short. Well, sometimes these Vaishnavas who are in our past history, we don't know so much about it because it is not accounted for. So it's sometimes difficult to know more. But at least there is a glimpse there that he was not an ordinary person. Purushottam Das Thakur, as mentioned here, was a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. So he took transcendental pleasure of serving Lord Balaram. And while he was here in Lord Chaitanya pastime, he was serving Lord Nityananda, who is also Balaram. How much is there? So there's a little bit, there's a lot here, but I will just read a little bit on Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj. on February 9th, 1996. Today also it happens to be February, 1st of February, and the day is 9th, 2015. So sometimes these, the actual date, the English calendar really coincides on the same day because we follow the Tithi, so Tithi is always fluctuating. But at least today is the 9th, so I suppose it's considered also a very auspicious day. On the February 9th, 1996, the holy appearance day of Srila Bhaktisidhantha Sarasvati, two senior devotees requested an appointment to see Srila Gaur Govind Goswami. They had never spoken with him before, but they had become eager to hear from him after reading some of his books. As if by providential arrangement, they entered his room at 6 p.m. and submissively inquired, "Why did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stay in Jagannath Puri?" He laughed with delight and began to explain the confidential significance of Mahaprabhu's pastimes. In answer to his question, he lovingly described the pains of the separation felt by Radha and Krishna when Krishna was away from Vrindavan. He had often narrated these moving pastimes as recorded in his last great work, The Embarkment of Separation. The enchanting all the devotees in his room with the nectarian topics of Krishna, he gradually unfolded the pastimes to the point where Radha and Krishna were finally united after their loving separation. He described how Krishna became so ecstatic upon seeing Radharani that he manifested a form with big round eyes known as Lord Jagannath. With a choked voice, he said, "Then the eyes of Krishna fell upon the eyes of Radharani." Eye-to-eye union. Overwhelmed with the love of Radha and Krishna, he apologized and he folded his hands. "Please excuse me, I cannot speak." In a barely audible voice, he gave his final instruction, Krishna Kirtan. All the devotees began to chant as their spiritual master lay back on his bed, breathing very slowly and deeply. A servant nearby placed a picture of Gopalji in his hand. Then gazing lovingly at the picture of his worshipable deity, Srila Gaur Govind Goswami called out, "Gopal," and departed for the spiritual sky to be united with his beloved Lord. Hare Krishna. So, of course, we can see that this is the testimony that if you dedicate your life in the spirit of devotion and engage fully in serving the mission work of Srila Prabhupada, and also paying attention to your personal sadhana of chanting and hearing and reading, and dedicate your life, at the end, when that inevitable end comes, surely Krishna will make arrangement for you to remember him and leave this world chanting the holy name, and thereby go back home, back to the spiritual world, and be successful in our endeavors of our spiritual journey. So on this note, I will stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai. 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 इसलिए बोला कि आप यहाँ मंदिर में आकर बैठ जाओ। पहले मैं बता दूं कि आपका जो शरीर जो है, ये पंचभूत का शरीर एक मंदिर है, कि इसमें आप विराजमान है, आपका जो आत्मा है इस शरीर में है, साथ साथ में परमात्मा भी है आपका हृदय। परमात्मा भगवान है, तो जहाँ भगवान है वो मंदिर है, तो आप हरता फरता मंदिर है, ठीक है। दूसरा, आपका घर में आपका पति देव है, आपका पुत्र पुत्री होगा, आपका माता पिता होगा, आपका सास ससुर होगा, और कई अनेक रिश्तेदार होगा, रिश्तेदार होगा, ठीक है। जो भी है, तो आपका जैसे आप यहाँ मंदिर है, जिन्हें वैसे आपका शरीर बताया मंदिर है, तो आपका घर में भी भगवान का निमंत्रण करके बोलवाइए। आपके घर में मंदिर है मतलब भगवान है, ठीक है। तो राधा गोविंद जी आपका घर में है, तो राधा गोविंद जी आपका घर में है, तो मतलब आपका घर मंदिर है। तो मंदिर में बैठकर आप स्व परिवार इकट्ठे होकर भगवान का हरि भजन करो, हरि कीर्तन करो, और जो आप खान पान करते हैं राधा गोविंद जी को प्रेम भावना से भोग अर्पण करके प्रसाद का रूप में प्रसाद लीजिए। और समय जब मिले तो भागवत का वांचन कीजिए, आप गीता पढ़ो, भागवत पढ़ो, और पढ़ने के बाद आपस पूरा परिवार में इसके चर्चा करो कि हम हमारे शुद्ध भक्ति कैसे आगे बढ़ा सकते हैं। ऐसे नहीं है कि हम बोलते कि घर समाज छोड़ दो। हाँ, घर समाज कौन छोड़ते हैं कि जिसको पूरा जीवन भगवान को समर्पित करना है, तो वो भगवान को समर्पित कर दो। लेकिन समर्पित करने के बाद विचार नहीं करना चाहिए कि मेरा आगे पीछे वाला क्या करेगा। मैं बताता हूँ, अगर मैं सोचेगा कि मेरा बाप है, मेरी माँ है, मेरा भाई है, मेरा बहन है, ये सब लोग है और ये सब मेरे ऊपर निर्भर है, अगर मैं नहीं करेगा तो कौन करेगा। अगर मेरा अभी इसी समय देहांत हो गया तो उसका कौन करेगा रक्षा। हाँ, तो कहना क्या है कि हम सब भगवान के ऊपर निर्भर है, किसी और ऊपर नहीं है। हाँ, अगर हमारा वश में जो कुछ है हम कर सकते हैं, लेकिन हाँ हाँ आपका धर्म बनता है, कर्तव्य एक ही है कि आपका सो परिवार को भक्त बनाओ, बस इतना ही है। अच्छा संस्कार दो और अच्छा भक्त बनाओ। हाँ, धर्म देखो, माँ का धर्म क्या है कि बच्चा पैदा करना, उसका पालन पोषण करना है। हाँ, और बच्चे का क्या कर्तव्य है, माता पिता का सेवा करना। अगर वो नहीं करते तो दुर्भाग्य है उनका, क्योंकि देखो हमारा भारतीय संस्कृति में बोलते हैं कि माँ का चरण में स्वर्ग है कि नहीं। तो अगर वो जो समझ नहीं पाते तो उसका दुर्भाग्य है। लेकिन कोई बात नहीं, वो छोड़ दो, आप इसकी पर निर्भर मत रहो, कृष्ण पर निर्भर रहो। श्री कृष्ण है, वो सबका पिता है, सबका बेटा है, सबका माँ है, सबका भाई, सब कुछ है। कृष्ण का नाम जप करो बस। नहीं 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 नहीं, ये आपका माफ कीजिए, आपका सोच गलत है। नहीं देखो, ये आप हाँ है, लेकिन अगर नहीं है तो क्या जबरदस्ती कर सकते हैं? नहीं, ये तो ठीक है, ठीक है। हरे कृष्णा। जय श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय।